Hey everyone, Kaiser here, and before this video starts, I just want to say thank you for gaining me over 300 subscribers. I didn't really think I would get this many, especially with how times are now, but I really appreciate all of you watching my videos, and I hope that this video shows you how much I appreciate your support. So with that, let's get into it.
Get the hell out of my way, Deku! Huh?
Hello everyone, Kaiser here, and by the time you are watching this, it is going to be my birthday.
Happy birthday to the bastard! Happy birthday to the bastard! Happy birthday to the bastard! Eat your f***ing cake!
And because it is my birthday, I thought I'd do a video that a lot of people have asked for ever since I put up my first action figure comparison video, that being the Midoriya or Deku action figure comparison, by comparing the Bakugou action figures made by Figma, McFarlane, and the Anime Heroes line. And I decided to make this video a little bit later because after the Deku comparison, there were a few other videos that I wanted to do, you know, like the custom update and the Elric brothers, so that's why it took a little bit longer for this video to come out. But I hope you do enjoy, and I do want to say thank you for my Deku comparison video, giving probably my most viewed video yet. So I do want to thank you guys for that, and I'm glad you liked it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well. So with that, let's get into it. First we have sculpting and painting, and while this seems pretty obvious to me, I'm still going to talk about it. So starting with Figma, like with the Figma Midoriya, it's probably the most anime accurate in terms of sculpting and painting. With sculpting, you can see they brought a lot of details from the original character design, such as the little grenades he has on his belt, the sculpting on his pants and on his gauntlets, all look really nice, and that goes for the painting as well. It really does look like he jumped right out of the anime and into our world, if you know what I'm talking about. And I do like the expression they gave him for one of his heads, which is a cocky smile. And I also like what they did for the hair and the bits of the mask poking out from it. I think that's what that's supposed to be. But yeah, like I said, very anime accurate and looks very nice. When it comes to McFarlane, the thing, like when I see this figure, I think it looks a bit more realistic, at least compared to the other McFarlane My Hero Academia figures, but that might just be me. But it doesn't mean it's bad. I still like how the sculpting looks, even if it does look a bit realistic in my eyes. But when it comes to the head, that's where I kind of have a problem with it. And this might just be me, but it looks like he's a little bit insane. Like I think it's the mouth or the eyes, I'm not sure which, but even though I know Bakugou is known to have like this big toothy grin whenever he's getting like really hyped in a battle or something like that, for me it just kind of looks like he's 2 seconds from going insane and killing Midoriya. And the paint doesn't help with that, since it just makes him look a bit more insane. But again, that's just me. I do like how the sculpting is on the figure, with the hair, the bagginess of the pants, and the gauntlets. So again, it might just be me. So while I do like it, it just looks a bit off for me. And now we move on to Anime Heroes, and I'm gonna be honest, this is probably the worst looking one in my opinion. When it comes to the sculpt, for me at least, it looks too soft. When I think of a character like Bakugou, even when comparing him to the Figma version, while the Figma version is, you know, it looks clean, it's smooth, it looks anime accurate. But for Anime Heroes, it doesn't look like that. It just looks too soft. Everything kind of looks puffy to me. And that goes for the head as well. The face, in particular, does not look like Bakugou. As said by D-Stars when he reviewed the Anime Heroes Bakugou, it doesn't look like Bakugou. It just kind of looks like a bad cosplayer, in my opinion. And that goes for the hair as well. As also said by D-Star, it looks like there isn't enough of it, and it makes the head look either flatter or smaller. But yeah, I guess the sculpt isn't too bad, it's just, it looks soft. And that kind of goes for the paint as well. While it isn't bad, for me, it just kind of looks like there isn't enough detail put into it. It just looks very simplistic and not in a good way. So yeah, that's how I feel about Anime Heroes. And as for ranking, if you couldn't already tell, first is Figma, second is McFarlane, and third is Anime Heroes, only because of how off the head looks. And now we move on to articulation, and like the deku comparison video, we won't really be talking about how many points of articulation the figures have, but how well the articulation works when it comes to getting him into certain poses. And when it comes to Bakugou, there are two certain poses that I think are required in order for it to be a good figure, or at least have good articulation, which is a crouching battle pose and a flying through the air pose when he's using his quirk. Because when I see those two poses that he makes, the only thing that comes to my mind is Bakugou saying, those are the two poses that I always require Bakugou to be in, and we'll see how well these figures pull it off. Starting with Figma, it should be no surprise that Figma has pretty good articulation, but if you want to get technical about it, there are some limitations. One of them being the leg articulation, and I only say this because of how baggy his pants can be. So if you're trying to get them to move outward or forward, it will be limited somewhat, so you won't really be able to get him doing a full split, but you'll still be able to get him kicking outward or kicking forward a pretty good amount. Another limitation I guess you could count is the arms, or I should say more the elbow, because of the gauntlets. And that's something I always thought would be a limitation when it came to making an action figure based on Bakugou. It's the fact that his gauntlets seem so big that it would limit the articulation. But when it comes to these figures, the elbow articulation is actually pretty good, and we'll get to that later. So yeah, the articulation for the elbow is pretty good, and it also helps that this figure has a good diaphragm joint, so you can use it for him to crunch forward and back, and use it a bit as a waist swivel. And as you can see from the pictures on the screen, you are able to get some pretty good poses with this figure, even in the air. So I like that about this figure. Moving on to McFarlane, when I first saw this figure, I didn't think the articulation would be that good, but I was pleasantly surprised on how good it was. It's actually somewhat on par with Figma. For one, the elbows are actually double jointed, so you're still able to get a good range, even with the gauntlet. And it also helps that this figure also has a pretty good diaphragm joint. But probably the biggest limitation to the articulation is the thigh swivel. And if you know McFarlane, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you don't, the thing is with McFarlane, they prioritize sculpt over articulation. So instead of having a, say, Marvel Legends type thigh swivel, where there's a cut on the thigh and a peg that plugs into the leg to allow it to swivel, instead the thigh swivel is up at the hip, and while you are able to use it, you aren't able to get that much range, considering how much sculpting will be at the legs. For some figures, this isn't a problem if they don't have too much sculpting going on with the legs, but for other figures, it's kind of a problem, especially with, like I said, Bakugou. So while the thigh swivel is a bit of a problem, the legs actually aren't that bad. You're still able to get a good amount of range with them. And as you can see with pictures on the screen, you're still able to get some pretty dynamic poses with this figure. So, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised with how good the articulation was on this figure. But when it comes to anime lines, or anime heroes, I should say, again, it's probably the worst out of the three. Because the articulation isn't bad here, but you're going to get the least dynamic poses with this figure, and you'll see why. For one, the torso. Now, like I said, with McFarlane and Figma, they do have a diaphragm joint, which allows you to get some, ab crunch and swivel out of it. But for this figure, it doesn't have that diaphragm joint. It only has that joint at the waist. And while you are able to move it a bit to get that ab crunch, it won't be as flexible as it is with the other figures. So that's kind of a problem. Another problem is the legs, and I say this because these figures are made by the same people who make the Dragon Stars line, and while I do love the Dragon Stars figures, one of the biggest problems that I've seen a few people have with them is the leg articulation, the leg articulation, because of how they sculpt it and how they do it. And pretty much it's the same. For Anime Heroes and for Dragon Stars, it's the same as, I would say, the old SH Figure Arts, where they have a drop-down hinge that allows you to move the leg forward and out to the side, so you can get more range. But the problem with that is, from the way they sculpt the piece over it, you won't be able to get much articulation because of how hindered it will be. I've actually seen some people modify Dragon Stars figures in order to get more leg movement, and I see that as a problem with this Bakugou figure. While you are able to get the legs moving forward and out to the side, you won't be able to get as much range as with the other figures. So while you can get him in stuff like a crouching pose, it's not going to be as dynamic as Figma or McFarlane. Hey guys, real quick, there was one thing I forgot to mention about the articulation on this figure, and that was the knees. When I first saw this figure, I thought the knees weren't going to be that good, because with Dragon Star figures, especially characters with baggy pants like Goku and Piccolo, the knees tend to be very, not very, but they're somewhat limited, and you aren't able to bend them that much. But with this Bakugou figure, they are actually double jointed, as I saw in D-Star's video, so you are able to get some good knee poses, kind of like a landing pose, as you can see on the screen. So that was one thing I forgot to mention, but hopefully you know that this figure does have a good double knee joint. Another thing is that, what was I going to say? Right, the head. Another thing is that, again, with how Anime Heroes do head articulation, it's kind of the same with Anime Heroes Dragon Stars, where there isn't much range in the head, so that's kind of also a problem. So yeah, when it comes to the articulation for these figures, while I would say that Figma and McFarlane are evenly matched, I would have to give first place to Figma because of the thigh swivel being better than McFarlane, but McFarlane still comes in second place, and Anime Heroes comes in third. And now we move on to accessories, and I'm going to be honest, when I first started making this video, I thought the accessories were going to be the easiest thing to talk about, but it turns out I was wrong. And that's because I have a problem with each of these figures' accessories, which means I'm probably going to rant and complain about this, so be prepared for that. And I'll get into that, starting with Figma. Now, the Figma Bakugou comes with the most accessories, that being a pair of fists, a pair of open palm hands, and another pair of open palm hands with a plug, so you can put his explosion accessories into those hands. And he also comes with an alternate face, which is a screaming, angry face. Now, at first, I thought that this was a good batch of accessories, but the more I looked into it and the more I thought about it, it is somewhat disappointing. Starting off with the face. He only comes with 2 faces, and that's kind of disappointing considering that this is Bakugou, who is probably the most expressive character in My Hero Academia. Like, not even gonna lie, most of the faces he makes whenever he's really hyped up are meme worthy. And I'm kind of mad we didn't get any other faces for it. I mean, you could have gave him a face like the McFarlane figure, you know, kind of like a big toothy grin. Or you could have gave him a more cartoony angry face like we see throughout the series. Or heck, you could have even given him an unmaxed head, which I know would have been probably harder to do considering you would still had those pieces of the mask still attached to the head. But even then, you still could have made those detachable. I mean, if the Nendoroid Bakugou is able to have these faces, why can't the official Figma figure? So, like I said, it's a good batch of accessories, but there was still so much more you could have done with this figure. But I guess it isn't too bad, even if the price is a little too high in my opinion. Moving on to McFarlane, it only comes with one pair of hands, and those have his explosions shooting out of them. And the problem I have with this is, one, the explosions don't really look like explosions to me. They just kind of look like he's shooting flames from his hands. So that's kind of weird. I know some explosions probably do look like that, but for Bakugou, they just look a bit off. And the second problem is that he can't remove them at all. They're permanently attached to the figure unless you go in there and actually cut them off, which is what somebody on Instagram did. I forgot his name, but I'll put the picture up here. So yeah, again, it isn't great, honestly. And now that I think about it, going back to the McFarlane Midoriya figure, he came with an alternate head, so I don't know why you couldn't have given an alternate head to Bakugou, since it's clearly shown you can do it. So yeah, McFarlane is a bit disappointing. And now we move on to Anime Heroes, which comes with a pair of fists and a few extra set of hands. And my problem with this figure is that he doesn't come with any effect parts like explosions. And the reason I'm saying this is because Anime Heroes has shown they're able to give effect parts to figures. Look at the Anime Heroes Naruto figures. Naruto, Sasuke, and Kakashi all come with effect parts, that being a Rasengan or Chidori or whatever. So it's clear that they're able to give these figures accessories and still give them a good amount of, it is clear that they're able to give these figures effect parts, but also give them a good amount of hands. So I don't know why Bakugou didn't come with explosions, since that's his main thing. So yeah, like I said, I have a problem with the accessories for each of these figures. But when it comes to which figures work best, which accessories work best for the figure, as much as I kind of don't agree with it, I would still have to give it to Figma because of how many accessories it does have, so you're able to do more with them. Second, I would have to give to Anime Heroes because sure, it doesn't come with effect parts or anything, but it still comes with extra pairs of hands, which is better than one pair of hands with an effect part that you can't detach, which is why McFarlane in that case is in third. And now we finally move on to scale, and when it comes to Bakugou's official height, it is stated to be 5 feet and 7 inches. So when it's shrunken down to an action figure, it should be around 5 inches and 7 centimeters, at least for what I think is 1/12 scale. So when comparing the Figma Bakugou to the Figma Midoriya, I think it looks pretty good. He is appropriately taller than Midoriya, since Midoriya stands around 5 feet and 5 inches. But in my opinion, or this, this could just be me, it does seem like he's a bit too tall by like a centimeter or two. But again, that could just be me. I still think this looks pretty good, and it is mostly accurate. when going to McFarlane, as I stated in my deku comparison video, the scaling with these McFarlane My Hero figures tend to be really out of scale, honestly. When comparing Bakugou to the first three figures of the first wave, that being Midoriya, Shigaragi, and All Might, you can see that he actually stands shorter than all of them. With Midoriya, it's most obvious because he's supposed to be taller than Midoriya, but here he's shorter, and that kind of throws off the scaling. And when it comes to All Might, even though All Might is supposed to be towering over Midoriya and Bakugou, he still looks a bit too tall, even compared to Bakugou. And for Shigaragi, technically his official height is supposed to be 5'9", but it doesn't really bother me that he's taller than Bakugou here. So I guess that's fine. But when you compare him to the second wave of figures, that being Uraraka, Kirishima, and Shoto, like I stated before, all of them are actually too tall, especially Uraraka, who is supposed to be 5'1". She's supposed to be tall. She's supposed to be shorter than Midoriya. He's tall, yet she's taller. And with Kirishima and Bakugou, they're supposed to be around the same height technically. And then you just have Shoto, who's damn near as tall as All Might. So like I said, when it comes to scaling, at least for me, it's not good. The scaling is all out of whack. And when comparing the Anime Heroes Bakugou to the Anime Heroes Midoriya and All Might, again with McFarlane, it seems like Bakugou is too short compared to Midoriya. And again, this could just be me, but when I think of eye level for Midoriya and Bakugou, Bakugou should have, he should be taller. With this picture I'm putting on the screen, he should be looking down at Midoriya at least occasionally. But it seems like they're either the exact same height or Midoriya is taller. And as for All Might, again, he is supposed to be towering over both of them, but it seems like Bakugou is just too short when compared to All Might. So when it comes to the scale of these figures, first place would have to be Figma. Second place, I'm not entirely sure, since both figures, both McFarlane and Anime Heroes do seem to be shorter. But when compared to the other figures in their line, I probably have to give it to Anime Heroes, since it's not as noticeable when you compare the McFarlane Bakugou to the other McFarlane figures from My Hero Academia. And now we move on to ending thoughts. And like I've said in my deku comparison video, these videos aren't really, I don't really make these videos in order to say what figure I think is good or bad, unless it's just really obvious. It's just more getting my opinions out on these figures and, just sharing my thoughts with you. Because honestly, when it comes down to action figures, it's going to be about what you want in a figure. And again, that includes what you want with your Bakugou figure. Do you want a Bakugou figure that is cheaper and still has all the necessary components to make a good figure, such as good articulation and accessories? Then you're probably going to go with Anime Heroes. If you want a figure that fits in better with a certain scale, say 7 to 8 inches, then you're probably going to go with McFarlane. Or if you really want a figure that scales well, articulates well, and has good accessories, and goes with the other anime figures you collect, then you'll probably go with Figma. But honestly, I can't really say which one I would honestly get, because I have my own Bakugou figure that I made, and I'm happy with that one. But that doesn't mean that you can't go and discuss what figure which Bakugou figure you would want especially since McFarlane has shown that they're making another Bakugou figure based on the UA tournament arc, which I think is pretty cool. And it's also shown that they're making Stain, which is also pretty cool. So there are options out there, or heck, you can even make your own. So I still think that's pretty cool when it comes to action figures. But if you disagree with anything I stated in this video, or you want to tell me anything I got wrong or something like that, then feel free to tell me in the comments. I'll try my best to get back to you. But still, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.